Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show, where you will find interesting guests and discussions about cutting-edge topics to assist you on your journey. The Quantum Guide Show is ideally suited to the newly awakened and for those who feel isolated by their newfound beliefs. The mind, body, and spirit thrive when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change that we wish to see in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, and share this show with your friends. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today in episode 111, my regular guest is Aurora Seraphine. Aurora is the founder of Divine Alchemy Temple Arts, a spiritual healing arts practice offering numerous ways to heal and grow, both in person and remotely. She is an integrative holistic healing practitioner, unifying many modalities and sacred traditions. With a lifelong sensitivity to energy in other realms, Aurora naturally gravitated to the healing arts. In 2007, she co-founded a healing, training, and events center for subtle energy practices and paradigm-busting gatherings. She is an essential oil alchemist, massage and body worker, intuitive healer, and advanced energy worker. Aurora is also a hypnotist, a conscious musician, deep trance sound healer, and vocal alchemist. In 2013, she developed a sound healing technique called Sonoluminous Divine Entrainment, designed to support people in accessing specific brainwave states through frequency and guiding them to source-generated healing by creating new neural pathways. Aurora is also a writer, speaker, mama of two, and an advocate for an organic, high-vibe living and spirit-directed pregnancy and birth. She is an avid researcher of ancient texts and traditions and loves bridging the worlds of science and spirituality through the quantum. It is Aurora's commitment to align with her inner divine to support herself and others in becoming the most tuned in, radiant versions of themselves, awakened to the reality of heaven on earth. Today, we're going to talk a bit about ideologies and the truth about food. Aurora, welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. You're getting to be a regular. I think maybe you could be a regular feature every month on this show. You're such a wealth of information and wisdom. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me again, Karen. It's always such a pleasure.
Oh, me too. So we have a mutual admiration society going on here.
Totally.
So today we're going to talk about food ideology. So Aurora, I know that you've tried quite a few different patterns of eating. So have I. Do you want to start by telling us some of the ways that you have tried eating in the past? They may or may not have worked for you, but just so that people know what we're talking about, food ideologies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. I really started experimenting when I was, honestly, when I was a teenager. And interestingly, I think one of the things that guided me to explore different ways to experiment with food, I guess, is just for a woman, especially a young woman, especially in adolescence and coming of age, I think a lot of pressure is put on females specifically about what it is, how it is that they look mostly. And in fact, food is not even a point of education in most schools, which is really unfortunate. And I think that this should be it should be a large topic of conversation, because I know that where I was at, and, it may vary from school to school, or, if people are in a private school or homeschool, maybe it's different if you're not having as much programming, but I can speak for myself. Where I was at, there was so much programming in terms of body image. And the thing is that whether you're in some special school or not, you're still getting the scrutiny just from media, from billboards, from magazines. And so at a young age, I mean, I had an eating disorder at a very young age. And, I realized fairly quickly that it wasn't sustainable. And so I'm like, okay, well, how can I eat where I'm going to stay healthy and it's not going to ruin some concept of body image for me? And, and then there was a lot of healing just around that in general. But to stay on the topic of food, I realized like, okay, there's a whole world here to explore and nobody teaches you about it. And so the first thing that I think is the biggest lie is the food pyramid. It's an atrocity because they tell you that the most fundamental, important part of the foundation of your pyramid, of your diet, should be carbohydrates and grains, which are so inflammatory and so damaging to your gut, to your microbiome, to your brain, to your endocrine system, that, I mean, that's going to make you blow up like a balloon to begin with. So anyway, I started really early on. And one of the first things was for me, because part of it for me was also a spiritual awakening that I was going through at a very early age. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm just going to experiment with taking meat out of my diet. So that was the first thing that I did. I at about 15, I went vegetarian. Now, I think at that point, the thing is that many of us will explore what all of these different diets look like, but we don't explore nutrition as a whole. And then the problem is there's holes in all of these systems because you might say, okay, I'm going to go vegetarian, but then how are you going to fill that out in other ways? And what are you going to lean on, for your nutrition? And, at the time I was living in Wisconsin, I grew up in an Italian family, and dairy was a big thing. Like cheese was huge. And so I was just carbs and cheese on like everything that I ate. But of course, at that point, I didn't know I was doing the wrong things. And then I was just like, why can't I focus in school? Why do I feel like I can't? It's terrible brain fog. I can't think, and constant digestive pain. Like it was terrible. And I thought, oh, this is making me more spiritual because I'm not eating creatures.
Yeah, because I'm not eating meat. We're actually going to get into the whole vegan paradigm a little bit later. I myself also have an eating disorder, and probably more than one. I definitely have body dysphoria because it doesn't matter how skinny I get. I look in the mirror and all I see is this fat, dumpy woman, and it's always been that way. And so I do know I have it. So, but I've been bulimic all my life up until I would say about, maybe 10, 15, basically my spiritual awakening is what cured me of bulimia. But anyway, I used to just, starve and over exercise and everything to get my weight down. I lost 100 pounds 3 times in my adult life. But then what happened, as soon as I went out into mainstream society, it all came back on and more because everybody's out there eating pizza and going for Chinese and eating popcorn at the movies and all the things that are just so toxic for me. I didn't understand. Then I had my spiritual awakening, and at one point, I couldn't eat at all. I lost 80 pounds in 2 months, and I don't recommend this, but I actually became anorexic. I was skin and bones, but I looked in the mirror and I saw this fat, dumpy woman. And so I actually lost almost 200 pounds, Aurora, and slowly I put some of it back on. And I don't actually ever want to be that skinny again because I didn't feel good either. I didn't have a lot of energy, and my body temple was not thriving. But I learned and over time, and I've tried everything. I've tried keto, I've tried vegan, I've tried raw vegan, I've tried vegetarian, I've tried carnivore. Did I already say keto? Probably. I've tried paleo, and I was always trying to go externally for my eating requirements instead of having a spirit-led eating program. And so what I want to do today, Aurora, is tell the folks a little bit, because for some who don't know, that what is real food? And as I mentioned before, it's elements from the planets, the sun, and from heaven above. And it's so much more than vitamins and minerals. Oh, you've told you need this much vitamin A and D in a day. And you're told, oh, you have to have, your minerals, make sure you're getting your electrolytes up, right? But food is so much more than that. It's actually medicine. So I want to give you a couple minutes to talk about your philosophy around food as medicine, because I know you've got a spirit-led life too, Aurora.
Yeah. One of my favorite books really that covers this exact topic is the Essene Gospel of Peace. And I know we've talked about this a couple of times. And what I love so much about that book that really resonates with how I interact in my daily life with my food, at least my goal of how I want to interact. It's like we're not always perfect, when we have these experiences, but ideally, the way that they describe it in the book, they talk about they call them the angels of earth, the angel of air, the angel of the sun, the angel of water, the angel of peace. They go through all of these different things, which really, some people might think of that as like elementals as well. I mean, I really feel like it's kind of synonymous. So there's, it doesn't matter how you look at things from a spiritual perspective, there's sentience in everything. And like, Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden, they talk about, the field of epigenetics and how, our genetics are not determined by our ancestry as much as they are determined by our environment and how we choose to illuminate our bodies from the inside out.
Yes.
And this is huge. So the way that I really feel like interacting, with our food, how vital that is to do it with intention, to do it with honor and reverence, and really listen when we're feeling our food and when we're interacting with the water that we're taking into our body, whatever it is. There's things that we can do, like muscle testing.
Yes. Pendulum, also a pendulum if people want to.
Yes, exactly. And even just learning how to really listen with your body, which this is something I love working with people with. I know that this is, you've talked a lot about this in your work as well, is helping people to kind of turn on that intuition within themselves so that they do know what's a yes for them and what's a no for them. And in our ancestry, and I believe that certain, elements of our ancestry is passed down genetically, our memory, things like that, which is how, birds, learn to migrate, and different animals know how to do things, like the story of, the monkeys washing the sweet potatoes and stuff.
Yes.
Along those lines, it's like once enough, there's that tipping point, then it kind of becomes automatic. And so our ancestry, thousands and thousands of years back, our ancestors knew, even still today, there's still people today, including us, who if you learn how to be still enough and quiet enough, you can listen to the plants. They will speak to you. Now, they may not speak to you like, somebody that you're meeting in the grocery store, but they're going to speak to you in some way. They speak to you vibrationally. Sometimes they speak to you in your dreams. But regardless, they are medicine, but they are sentient. And that's the important thing that I think we need to bring back to all of this, is that all life is sentient, all life is sacred, And when we come from that perspective, we really have a much easier time listening to everything that we have in our environment and knowing, yes, my body is requesting this. And well, maybe this smells good and has like eye candy appeal, but I know that's not good for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and where to find that discernment, you know, how to differentiate what's going to feed us like on a cellular level and on a spiritual level that's going to help us upgrade, and then what's actually going to kind of keep us stuck, you know. So that's how I would describe it.
Very well said. You know, for me, like if I go, you know, if I'm with other people and they stop because they want to go to Tim Hortons, which is the Canadian donut store here, and they want to grab a donut and a coffee or something, and I look at all those donuts and pastries, and to me, they give me the same impression I would get if they were made out of plastic and they were display items, and I have no appeal to me at all. Meanwhile, I communicate with plants, and I do it in my garden. So I don't have much of a garden, but I do have a bit of a garden, and I love my relationship with the plants. Every time I'm touching them or I'm in there, we're exchanging all kinds of DNA and RNA, and there's all kinds of stuff. And I even believe that the plants will actually produce, they sense what we need, and they will produce more of what we need. And so when my eyes were opened up to the reality of food, I got to tell you two quick experiences. One was, and this is a long time ago, like more than 20 years ago. I'm old, so I have lots and lots of years of experience. And my brother Dan, who is a self-taught ethnobotanist, he knows all the plants for British Columbia and Western Canada, what their, you know, their common name, their Latin name, their medicinal properties, their nutritional properties. Anyway, so we were out one day and we were, I forget what we were, we dropped someone off at the ferry or something down the lower mainland. And we stopped the car because he wanted to have a smoke. We went into this field and we were just sitting in this field. And I said, Dan, hurry up. I want to go get something to eat. He said, Karen, open your eyes. And just like a gnome, he nimbly got up and started bouncing from plant to plant. He says, this plant has 400 times the vitamin C of oranges. This plant cures this. This plant does that. This plant has all the, you know, vitamin A and D that you need. This plant has this plant with this. And it blew my mind as I looked at my own past, lined up at the food bank for crappy canned soup and macaroni and cheese, when on either side of us and in the whole lot behind was all these medicinal, super potent, healing and nourishing plants all around us. These are the same plants people are spraying Roundup on. They're weeds. We gotta get rid of them. We need our pristine. People don't know, and it totally blew my mind. And another experience I had that was very short. I was growing tomatoes, and it was out in the hot summer, and I picked some tomatoes and I took them in the kitchen, and I was going to wash them in cold water. And as I washed them, their skins contracted and they became really firm. So they were soft when I picked them. When I ran them under cold water, they had a physical reaction to that cold water. And they became super firm, and they were cold, and I realized they were alive. And then, of course, I did a 38-day juice fast, and I was feasting every day on the blood, which is super sacred from plants. And I had the most spiritually uplifting experience, even to the point where my eyesight changed, Aurora. I could see things other people couldn't see. I could see colors that other people couldn't see. It was amazing. So I really, really get it. But for the people out there, you know, we hope to inspire you to look deeper into the spirituality of food, because then I think you can't go wrong, and you can get in touch with yourself and your inner guru. I know Aurora can help you if you need some assistance. I'm here to help you as well if you need it. So Aurora, let's transition a bit into what is not food, because a lot of people are confused on this issue. So for me, what is not food Well, it is food, but when people tell you can only eat these things and those things for spiritual reason, again, I don't consider that your real food. You're just following dogma and ideology. And
Yeah.
most of the food that we find in the supermarket has been engineered for 25 years shelf life. So around the peripheral of the supermarkets in Canada, you've got your eggs and your dairy and your meat and your vegetables, but down all those rows, it's all engineered for 25-year shelf life, which means it's completely soulless and dead, beyond dead. So people who are worried about, and I want to do another show on this, and that's prepping, spiritual prepping, which is not just getting ready in your head and your soul, but on how you can prep with foods that are alive and good for you. Because a lot of people are ordering all these dehydrated, basically like military food packets, because, come the war, we're going to starve and we need this. And I say, oh no, I'm staying the hell away from that. It's dead, it's lifeless, it's full of lectins. We're going to get into that a little bit more. The other thing too is all those packaged foods that have that 25-year shelf life, they're full of human-made chemicals, and they're so refined, and they're completely stripped of divine essence. So before we move on to the body temple, Aurora, do you have anything you want to add about, basically, it's not food, it's food-like substances?
Yes, definitely. I think some of the traps that people can really fall into very easily, especially when you've jumped on a certain bandwagon, and please, I need to be very clear that I mean no offense at all, because I understand that everyone resonates, with certain certain ideologies that work for you, and if that's how you're operating, that's totally fine. But what you need to be aware of is that certain companies and certain food sources, I'm going to say, because I don't think they're really real, is they'll kind of play to that model. And there's things that they call keto friendly, there's things that they call gluten-free, there's things that they call vegan, and vegan meats are the worst. I mean, no, I'm not going to say all of them. I don't want to say that as a blanket statement, because I have found some that are actually good, but it needs to be truly modeled after whole, living, nutrient-dense food. And honestly, if you're going to do vegan burgers and vegan meat sources like that, you're much, much better off making them at home. And I do that kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm swearing off meat. It's because I want to have enough variety in my life that I really am eating the rainbow,
Exactly. And boy, there's so much information in this one part. We may have to do a second one, because that's something I want to get into, is the eating of the rainbow. And a lot of people don't even understand that concept, which ties into the whole crystals, and it ties into all kinds of things. I mean, the creators made it so easy for us to heal and to have these vibrant lifestyles, but we have to have our eyes open to the reality of it.
Yes, I want to add too that,
please do,
that one of the things that was a major eye-opening turning point for me was when I came to admit that convenience is not care. And when I admitted that finally, it opened up a whole new world for me. And you know what I found was that I enjoyed being creative, that creativity equals health. And not only just my creativity, but my willingness to experiment, my willingness to go out in the woods with my kids and go forage. Like who'da thunk? Like, it's fun, and you get to feel. I mean, people like Zach Bush talks about this in his work of having that relationship and eating the food straight from the garden or straight from the earth.
There's nothing like it. Oh my God, there's nothing like it.
And I would give also two other resources for people that are interested in learning more about these types of philosophies. One is a book series called The Ringing Cedars, Anastasia, the Anastasia series, about this woman in Russia. She talks a lot about working with the plants and working with the seeds and working with the animals and even the insects. But also, I was just in the process of rereading the book, The Celestine Prophecy. I think I picked it up for the first time 15,
Yes.
maybe 20 years ago or something. And
Yes.
I'm reading it now with my son. And last night we were reading about the third insight, and they're talking about the part where they're sitting in front of these gardens, and there are people meditating with them, and the guy starts to see the energy around the plants. So I won't give the whole thing away, but it's very interesting because this book really paints the picture of what it's like to form that relationship with your environment and remember who you are and what you're capable of and where we're going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, in this day and age with a lot of screen time, and I struggle with screen time all the time too, meaning how much exposure I'm having to it. And people get lost as to what's real. And so there's sort of enmeshed within the what I call the construct. And yet you can step outside of that construct and this amazing reality unfolds that's just exciting no matter what direction you go off into. And that brings us back to the talking about the temple body. So we don't just look at it as being mouth cravings for something sweet or salty or a snack. We need to move way above that and take a look at our bodies as being a temple. And I have a slide here with Kirlian photography I just want to show you, taken from my quantum guides. My quantum health transformation program. Let me see, we want slide number 7. Because it's got some beautiful images here. So it says, on a spiritual level, our bodies are temples, sustained in ways that surpass the physical elements that we can see or touch. Kirlian photography reveals the energetic quality of food, which is also present in our physical and etheric bodies. Local, organic, fresh, raw, live, and wild foods add an abundance of sun energy, as seen with Kirlian photography, to nourish and heal us in ways mostly unknown in modern society. Food is a rich source of spiritual energy. It makes all things possible because it expands our conception of reality and possibility. So the picture at the top left is a man in a meditation pose. They've used Kirlian photography because we're leaking this light energy all the time. We just don't see it with our eyes. So we need specially adapted cameras. Below him, this I believe is either a cacao or a hemp seed. And look at the incredible vibrant energy. Now that's not in supermarket foods. Here's a leaf. You can see the beautiful energy from just a leaf. And here's a picture of me. It was taken quite a while ago. And this is my aura, which is another sort of part of a thing. It wasn't taken with Kirlian photography. It was using another form, but it oh my gosh, I forgot to screen share it. I'm sorry. So everything I just said, and oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Here it is. I'm not going to reread this because I just read it. But again, let's go back to the top left picture. There's the body. Aurora, can you see this?
Yes, I can see now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So here's the body leaking the light energy out of every pore, as taken with Kirlian photography. The second one is either cacao or a hemp seed, and that's just a natural, vibrant. These are extremely powerful superfoods, and we can see the aura. Below that is the leaf, and then on the right-hand side is a picture of me with my aura. And so I think the body, Aurora, is a gateway linking earth to heaven. It can be such a source of great joy. I just want to skip down now to slide number 10. Can you still see this, Aurora?
Yes.
It says slide number 10 at the top.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So here again, Kirlian photography. Look at these seeds, how dynamic and full of energy that they are. Well, the doctors don't even recognize this. Most nutritionists and people that are even health gurus are not recognizing this. So I tell people to feast on foods that are satisfying and serve as your ultimate medicine. Experience for yourself this wonderful source of universal love energy. Experience well-being and prepare to be amazed. All the foods and images in this particular primer are all raw and unprocessed. Look at how delicious. Here's an apple. Look at how full of energy it is. You can have smoothies. You can make desserts, everything. So I'm going to stop the share and give you a few minutes, Aurora, to talk about the body temple and how you see what we commonly call food.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to say really quick, just to reflect what you were showing, is that how many foods do we eat that, well, I don't know about everybody, but people that are eating fruits and vegetables and things like this, okay? How many foods do we have typically in our house that you can actually either take a seed from, you can take a cutting from, you can take a piece from, and you can replant it?
And you don't need you don't need to dig up your yard. You can do it in pots in your house on a ledge if you don't have a yard.
And people don't see the food in their refrigerator that way. They don't see it that way most of the time. And especially, honestly, if you're getting mostly packaged foods, it doesn't have that energy. It's not going to reproduce. It doesn't contain life force. You want something that has the largest amount of life force because it helps to build our personal electromagnetism. So like when you were talking about what isn't food, I mean, the impossible burgers, the scary stuff that's lab grown, you don't even know. It's like, you don't even know what they're doing to make that stuff. We don't even want to get into that, but you know, and the gluten-free stuff, it's just grains. It's just a different type of grain that is still doing damage. And, you know, with a lot of the vegan stuff, they're making all of these fake cheeses and things like that. And those are mostly fillers, potato starch, maltodextrin, plastics,
seed oils.
Seed oils. Yeah. Canola oil, from what I remember, is only like, it's so close to essentially being a plastic that it's like, please just try to, you know. And then for people that are newly like, oh, I'm going to go vegan, they go to the grocery store, and I don't know about you, but around here, like the Morningstar brand, you know, that was something I remember that coming out, you know, like 20 or 15 or 20 years ago. And people were like, oh, I don't eat chicken nuggets anymore. I eat Morningstar. Okay. That's full of like crap, grains, soy, probably lectins as well, fillers, corn, like corn starches and syrups, and it's just things that end up being so full of starches, fillers, gums, sometimes food dyes to even make them look like meat, that are so destructive to the body. But anyway, back to your question. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to speak about that, because
it's important, Aurora.
It's a trap. It's a trap for people that are wanting to get healthy, that they think they're doing the right things, and then they're gravitating towards foods like that because they're convenient, they're packaged. I can eat this in 5 minutes. And that's a mistake. It's a mistake, and we have to re-educate ourselves on how to correct that, and then figure out what we do need to be leaning in on to heal the body temple, which is what we're talking about now. So what was your question again? I know you were in reference to the body
Well,
temple.
actually, we were talking about the body temple. We kind of moved into the vegan pitfalls. I have a few things to add when you're done, but
Yeah.
you know what, Aurora, nothing you say is worthless. Everything you say has wisdom. You can't lose. So whatever comes out of your heart is something the viewers need to hear, I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, in terms of the vegan pitfalls, I think, you know, some of the easiest traps that people get into, and that is leaning really heavy on carbs, and then the processed foods, the processed cheeses and things like that, because you're not getting the same nutrient dense proteins. And then so people aren't and the truth is that, you know, there is a kind of a myth around protein as well, that you need such a massive amount of it.
Yes.
But it's getting the right types of proteins and knowing that our pancreas actually produces specific enzymes that it won't produce if you don't have some kind of animal product. And I know, and I'm not trying to dissuade vegans, and trust me, I actually, you know, if I could, I probably would be vegan, because I identify on a more spiritual level with that way of thinking. I really, it's not in my heart to want to harm any animal or, but also, like, you know, a recent blood draw showed that my omegas were so dangerously low. My naturopath told me, you're going to hurt yourself if you don't start eating fish. You know, and she also said that my B12 was incredibly dangerously low. And she's like, you need to have either a really good supplement or you have to have some kind of red meat. I still struggle with that one, I'll be honest.
Of course.
But yes, I mean, so, and I think that another thing is that vegans will lean really heavy on the lectins, and they're not always as educated about what's working for you and what's not. And if you do have a lectin sensitivity, you know, you have to start focusing on completely refiguring that altogether. But the other thing is that if you are, you know, eating legumes as a vegan, if you are eating seeds and nuts and things like that, knowing how to prepare them properly so that, you know, your body is able to assimilate them. You're getting rid of some of the lectins, you're getting rid of some of the phytic acid so that your body can go into, you know, that enzyme producing mode and have proper breakdown. And also another pitfall that I would say, and this is just from my perspective, is that sometimes, especially in raw veganism, you get so alkaline that actually can present a problem sometimes too, because you don't have enough of that acid balance in the body to start to break down the food. And when you're low in stomach acid, then sometimes people end up with things like SIBO, where they're not digesting their food anymore.
Do you mind if I stop you there, because there's a couple things I want to fill in
yes, take the reins
before we move in, but I don't want to cut you off, because like I said, everything you say is amazing and totally I agree with it. So I wanted to also say, I agree, the vegan pitfalls. So, you know, I also hate to hurt animals. In fact, I was raw vegan, and I ended up, we'll get into some of these terms if we have time a little bit. Boy, time goes by so fast. But what I wanted to say is this is my understanding on the ethical aspect of food, okay? Now, animals are innocent. They're beautiful. We love them, you know, and we don't want to ever hurt them or anything like that. But you know what? Plants are actually more innocent than animals are. So animals still have the capacity to be assholes once in a while. You know what I mean? They don't mean to. It's not like they're consciously trying to go out and screw with anybody. But I mean, you know what I mean? Animals are animals. They make mistakes and they do all kinds of dumb things too. But plants are completely innocent. They are just as full of life, not the way we understand it with a heart beating and a brain, but that doesn't make them any less part of the whole spiritual realm, that the magical land and reality that we have access to. They're completely innocent. And so we're just plucking them out of the ground and we're just cooking them and killing them and eating them. Now they've done experiments with plants where they put little electrodes on their little leaves, and then they chop down one of the plants and put it in boiling water, and the little plant that sees this is freaking out. So I mean, there is no real ethical issues. So I was eating all plants, and I also, you know, thank them for their sacrifice and love them very much. But then I ended up with these gut issues that wouldn't go away, and I was suffering so much. So I had to go back on animal protein. So of course I started with bone broth, and then when I ate my first meat meal, I cried and cried and cried, and I prayed to the animals, and I said, I am so sorry to be eating you. Now, when I realized that plants were alive and sentient, I prayed to them. I said, I am so sorry that I am killing you and eating you, but I need to survive. And the response I got, which was not them talking to me in English, but, you know, the way when we become attuned, we're able to understand body sensations as language. Okay. And they told me they have three primary purposes. One is to reproduce. That's their first primary thing that they do. The second thing is to add to the harmony and balance of the planet. And the third thing is to supply themselves as food, especially for those that are doing the spiritual work. That made me feel so much better. So then I was praying to the animals, and I was bawling my eyes out. Now I did go to a grass-fed and humanely raised meat market for my meat. I was very careful. Because also I want that life force that is not so much in these horrible factory farm meats. And I prayed, and I got the same answer. I was shocked. They said, Karen, we're in a better place. They said, Karen, our primary purpose is to reproduce. Our secondary purpose is to add to the, sorry, it's going to make me cry, the balance and the harmony of the planet. And the third purpose is to offer ourselves up as food for those that are doing the spiritual work. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind. It took away all that guilt and all those bad feelings, you know, I had around food. So I also want to just quickly go on with the vegan pitfalls. Well, first of all, a lot of vegans that I know go out into the super, I should say the health food markets, and it's almost all junk food and junk toxic synthetic pills. Almost all of it. There might be a little tiny, you know, organic section, and people are buying all these protein bars and electrolyte mixes, which is basically Gatorade. It's crap. It's all crap. They're not healing and sustaining the temple body, and that sort of takes away from all that effort and willpower that they're exerting. The other thing is GMO. They don't have to put GMO on the labels. And so quite often I notice vegans are buying foods that are not organic. And the only way you can get non-GMO is to buy organic. You're going to pay 3-4 times the price, but your money has to pay for value, something that's feeding and nourishing you. It's so important.
Can I add something to that really quick?
Yes, please do.
Is that, you know, I think sometimes that's not always the case, especially if we're going to farmers markets, that we find that actually it can be very comparable in price to what you'd be paying for conventional food, especially nowadays, now that it's more prolific. And the second thing I would add to that, just really quickly, is that the more that you start eating organically, the more nutrition that's actually in your food, you find you don't have to eat as much.
Exactly.
So your grocery bill ends up being significantly lower because you're eating better quality food. And the last thing that I'll say about that is that it's preventative medicine. So the food that you're eating today saves you on having astronomical hospital bills later. So sorry.
No, it's a way to pay it forward to yourself. So that was the other thing. Like, I know a lot of vegans, they eat a lot of fast food. So I had one friend, and she gave me this big lecture about how bad I was, and I wasn't spiritual and everything because I was eating meat. And then she asked to go to McDonald's so she could have pancakes and coffee. And to me, It just blows my mind. So I'm not judging her. It's her will. She has free will. But where I do object is that she's trying to guilt trip and shame me. And the other thing is, and this is not everybody. There's a lot of beautiful vegans out there, but I found some of them are a little bit contemptuous, and they're looking down at the meat eaters to make themselves feel elevated. That's not spirituality. I'm just going to leave it at that. And so, as we've touched on before this, herbivore versus omnivore, okay? So both are ethical. Both are ethical. So if you want to eat some meat in your diet, like Aurora said, we don't need tons and tons. Like that whole carnivore thing, I don't know who does well on that, but I tried it and I didn't do so well. Without some live food every day, I don't do so well. That's all I know. But there are choices. So you can either go for grass-fed. So in Alberta, the grass-fed and pastured animals are fairly cheap to buy. In fact, I went in and compared prices between Costco, Save On Foods, and the grass-fed meat market, and the prices were the same. And if you looked at the meat that was in Save On Foods or even Costco compared to the meat I'm getting, so beautiful, and no scar tissue. That was the thing. I bought a bit of liver for my cat from Save On, which is like the local grocery store, because I couldn't make it out to the meat market because I always feed her grass-fed beef, raw grass-fed beef liver every day. That's not the only thing she eats, but I'm just saying she gets that every day. And she's on a spiritual journey too. And I bought some liver from the supermarket and I couldn't believe the difference, Aurora. The liver from the grass-fed was red, and the only other thing that was in it were the little places for where the veins run through the liver. The liver I bought at the supermarket was gray. It was full of scar tissue, absolutely full of scar tissue. And it looked completely disgusting, but anyway, she didn't mind. She liked it. So I just wanted to say that there isn't an ethical issue here when it comes to what you eat. And when you're following spirit, it's like layers on an onion. You know, at first you go, well, I want to eat a little bit less meat. Maybe I'm going to dabble in some organic vegetables. And slowly your life starts to change, because spirit will speak to you and teach you how to eat. So the other thing I wanted to say is heritage and background. Sorry, I'm rushing a little bit because I want to get through some of this before the time's up. Your heritage and your background speak volumes as to what you should be eating. And so as an example, if you take someone who's Inuit, which we used to call Eskimo, and they're living up near the North Pole, and you put them on a tropical diet, they will get sick, because the way that they and their ancestors have been eating for thousands and thousands of years works, and they have amazing health. If you take someone from the tropics at the equator and you take them away from their, basically high fructose diet, and you put them in the North Pole and you feed them nothing but blubber, they're going to get really sick. If you take someone whose background is, maybe Southeast Asian or Asian, and your people been eating that way for thousands of years, and you suddenly move to California and you're eating all kinds of food that your ancestors, you're not genetically set up for it. So if you're going to change your diet outside of your heritage, you do so very slowly and very carefully. Because as Aurora mentioned actually earlier on in this podcast, you've been acclimatized and you're genetically geared for certain kinds of food. Well, today, at least in my society, you can eat anything. Actually, it's not true. I was going to say you could have Chinese food, you could have Italian food, you could have Greek food, you could have any Thai food, any kind of food. But the reality of it is none of that, because of the nature of restaurants and food preservation, is probably very little of it is actually traditional eating. It's just the American version to give you a different, thing. Anyway, I'm going to stop there for a minute because I want you to, Aurora, to weigh in on blood type O and cruelty-free. So I'm blood type O. Blood type O's need we have extremely sensitive digestive systems. we need some meat protein, we need some meat fats, and we need basically like lettuces and broccoli and cabbage and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if you have anything you want to say about the whole concept of, if you're going to eat meat, this kind might be better. Do you know anything about the hulled hemp seeds? And is there anything you want to say about this section before we move on?
Yes. Okay. So you said
I said a lot. I'm
seeds.
sorry.
I just want to make sure I don't forget. What was the first thing?
What that I asked you to speak about now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just blood type O, which is the only blood type that actually does require some meat protein. But then there's also held hemp seeds that will also work. And then just the whole concept of cruelty-free.
Oh, yes, that was what it
protein
was.
Sources. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I guess I'll touch on that first. Honestly, I mean, and you're going to find this as you start looking, as you start digging and you do a little bit more research. You know, even with eggs, there is a difference between pasture raised and cage free. Cage free just means that they're not in a tiny little confined space. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're outside and they have sunshine and they have more than 5 feet around them that they can walk around. Because now, and I'm telling you this from experience, I have been to some of these places. I have been to some of the organic valley farms, actually, and I've seen some of the insides of their organic hen houses, and it's frightening.
Yes.
It's really frightening. And I'm not saying this because I'm trying to put down Organic Valley. I think what they're doing as a company is really great. And then there's so many more too. But there is a difference between cage-free and pasture-raised. Now, if you want some, you know, eggs from something, that they're going to be far more nutrient dense, and have more life force energy if those chickens are happy.
Yes.
You know, give them the opportunity to be out and explore. And even if you can get them from someone local that you know, that has chickens, or a farmer's market or something, the chances of these chickens being happy, loved chickens that are poking around in the garden, eating bugs and, you know, weeds and stuff like that, you get the eggs that you end up getting then have these beautiful, rich, deep orange yolks versus some of the ones that even in the grocery store that they call organic.
Yes.
You crack them open, they're so tiny and they're like this pasty, you know, pastel yellow. And you're like, okay, you know, and it's not even, the thing is, we wouldn't know the difference if we hadn't had both to compare.
Yes. We don't know the difference. So we don't know what we've been missing.
Yes. Vibrationally, they are different and you can feel it when you eat them. And what I found too is that you don't need as much of them, again, because they're so rich with life force.
Yes.
That you don't have to, you know, completely cook them until they're rubber, you know, and they're so nutrient dense that, you know, 1 or 2 eggs will suffice.
Yes,
at a time.
You can't even eat more than 2 because, you know, when you're hungry and you take a mouthful and it tastes so delicious, by the time you finish the second egg, you're satisfied. If you try to eat a third, it actually makes you feel a bit sick because you don't need it. It's absolutely true, Aurora. In my experience, absolutely true. I think for someone who's just starting out, if you do have to go to the supermarket for your eggs, I think your organically fed free range is better than the other eggs, okay? But
Yeah.
I agree. You can go to the farms, you can go to the farmers market. Almost everybody can somehow get to these things and enjoy the real McCoy. And I actually went out to a farm and I saw the chickens out there, and they're all scratching and fighting, and they got this big old hen house. I don't know what they do with them in the wintertime, so I'm more cautious about my eggs in the wintertime. But I went, oh my God, those are happy chickens. I want some of those eggs. I knew I didn't want the chickens because I didn't want to kill them, but I would eat their eggs. You're absolutely right. Life force. Once you understand the whole principle of life force, it's a huge game changer. And I just want to quickly add another thing is when I switch from an inferior diet to a superior diet, it takes us maybe 3 days to start to produce the enzyme, because the enzymes for digestion start as a response to the foods you're eating. And so when you're eating different foods, like say, for instance, you're switching over to more vegetables in your diet and less refined carbs, it takes about 3 days. So in the beginning, you eat salad and you go, oh my God, this is so bland. Oh, this is horrible. When you get off sugar and stuff, you have a mouthful of lettuce and it's so sweet. And the flavor's huge. Why? Because our digestive enzymes now have had time to switch over, right? Because you don't need really hardly any digestives when you're eating refined foods. It breaks down so easily, right? But when you're eating real food, like say, for instance, salad, your mouth, it needs to break that down. And then I was going to talk later on, but maybe I'll put it in here, is chewing and environment. So what happens is first of all, if you're growing your own food, you have a relationship. If you're preparing from scratch, and you all can do this, you can just take a Saturday afternoon and get out of the Netflix or whatever you do and get into the kitchen and prepare food. It doesn't even have to be cooked. It can be cooked. It could be raw, and you get it ready. So you need to buy out the time to do this. So when you're preparing food, you're developing a relationship. Your body, through your fingers and through your eyes and all your senses, you're absorbing so much information and data. And so what happens is you're building a relationship with your food as you are preparing it. Plus, it's very zen to sit there and just chop, 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 chop. Very, very, very zen. Fantastic opportunity to meditate, right? And so you do that, and then you put the food in your mouth, and this is after the 3 days, so you've developed your enzymes. Oh my God, the explosion of flavor just knocks your socks off. It's so delicious. And you get this real loving, positive relationship with your food. And then the other thing is environment. Are we standing there eating quick because we got to get out the door? Or are we, watching the news while we're eating? Oh my God, no, 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 no. You want to create your home to be so relaxed and beautiful and nurturing, and you want to eat in a beautiful, natural environment, even if it just means drag a chair out into the sun and sit there and eat while you're hearing the birds and the winds blowing. And anyway, I'll shut up now because I know, Aurora, you got things you want to say about that.
No, I love it. And I love that you and I can kind of go back and forth on this, because I think you and I are both so passionate about this topic, and it's so multifaceted. So, oh my goodness, you had so many gold nuggets in there, and they were just triggering one after another, so many things. So I'll do my best to try to condense them so that I'm not taking up too much time.
That's okay. Go for it.
One thing that I want to mention is yes. So going back to the cruelty-free meat and stuff like that. Yes, grass-fed, ideally, and you don't want nitrates in your food. So no nitrate. You don't want things that have hormones. That's why if you just go ahead and you get the organic stuff, they're not putting antibiotics in your food. There's no the growth hormones. You don't have to deal with that because it's not approved. It's not approved by the organic certifications. So, and that's not to say that there aren't other things that slip through the cracks sometimes. And that's why the closer to the land that you can find things like that, if you are choosing meat, the better. And obviously, ideally you want the animal to have lived a good, happy, healthy life. So not just that they're not just being fed grains, or, crap food, but that they're being treated with love and kindness and respect. And I know there's the conversation that, anytime that you're taking an animal's life, that's not technically cruelty free. And I do understand. I get that. I really do. But the most, if that majority of their life up until that moment, can be full of love, full of sunshine, full of pasture and, kindness, then I think, animals that go through these mass farming operations and that are really violently just shoved through into these, basically these lines one after another, just being violently, they're seeing all of this, the adrenaline's pumping through their bodies, the all kinds of unbeneficial hormones that they're producing right before they're dying. And so not only are you're eating emotional poison, you're eating fear, and you're taking on the energy. So for people that are really emotionally sensitive and empathic, that's going to be difficult for you, because you're going to be taking that on. And most people have no clue that that's part of the reason why they're feeling the way that they're feeling, because they're taking on that animal's emotional signature at that moment before they died, before they transitioned. So that I think is, yeah.
Sorry, can I just add a quick thing? First of all, here in Alberta, what they do is they've stopped, stun killing them. They now gas them. So now they're getting gassed with CO2. Now, what does that do to the meat, right? And I just wanted to throw that out there. And then the other thing too is we know from so many testimonials from people who have had organ transplants, it changes their personality. And so I'm not going to go on and on about that, but I'm just saying to support what you just said about how when we're eating that meat, we are absorbing the suffering, we're absorbing all of it. And it does make an effect on your mental health.
Yes, definitely.
Please continue. Sorry.
And so there's not a lot in terms of the blood type conversation that I would add to that. I think O blood type really needs to have some personal inquiry. If you are someone who would rather not eat meat, just really take a look at that, but also just feel inside of yourself. Again, get into that space of quietness and openness and willingness to listen to spirit for what's right for you, because we may have an aversion to want to do certain things, but if spirit's saying maybe integrate a little bit of this, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be like you're eating flesh of an animal, right? It could be maybe you're just consuming bone broth or eggs or something like that, that could be beneficial for you. But definitely, I think with an emphasis on the O blood type, that one specifically. But I know that there's so much reading material out there that eat right for your blood type. So just, I would encourage people to dive into that. The other thing you mentioned was hemp seeds. And yes, they are such a whole food. I know you mentioned some other things before we started the show too about part of their composition that really surprised me, but another, I'll let you cover that. But
many of us have now discovered that the world is not what we thought it was, and global events have left many feeling unsettled and even isolated. Karen Holton offers vital services that may be just what you need as she supports your journey into the weird and wonderful. Karen offers awakening support and ascension consultation to support individuals on their journey. For more details, check out her various vital services. Once you find your way through this process, there are many blessings on the other side. Visit Karen's website, KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, to get started today.
One of the things that I know for me was that at one point I was very low in magnesium, and they're so full spectrum in terms of their mineral content as well as their oils, and their fats and protein, that there's such a whole food. And so that helped me level out my magnesium without, feeling like I had to OD on magnesium supplements, which are usually just one type of magnesium, and they're not really filling the shoes of the type of magnesium.
They make you poop a lot if you take too much of those too, right?
Yes, that is so true. So yeah, so I'll let you fill in the blanks with that. One other thing that I would add to that category is modern agriculture and how different foods are today than they were,
Yep.
when we were eating these foods out in the wild. So, we've talked about, and I know you've talked about on your show, our ancient ancestry and ancient civilizations, and even the seeding of the races on the planet and things like that. And I hypothesize, I know this is a totally different conversation, but I hypothesize that the reason why our dispositions and our blood types require different types of food is possibly because of that original genetic seeding that happened on this planet. So
I agree 100%.
We might look at that as regional things now, and that's totally fine. Like if we just want to look at it that way now, that's fine. But when I kind of pull my observation back, that's what I'm shown, is that it goes back way, way farther than that. And so that's why we're all so unique, and really the best thing that we can do is learn how to tune into our own intuition when it comes to eating, and know that sometimes that can change, that sometimes our bodies are really deficient in one thing for a little while, but once you even that out, then maybe your body's like, you know what, I really need fruit now. And there's a whole other, and so, that's a big thing with keto, is that, keto will have you completely swear off fruit. And for some purposes of healing the body and maybe resetting the metabolism and getting the body into autophagy and doing deep cellular healing, I think that can be really beneficial for a time. But there is vital electricity in fruit specifically that helps to reignite the body. And, this is talked about in so many different spiritual scriptures as well, about fruit being a gift to man. And so I don't think that it's something that people should just look at as, oh, well, it contains fructose or some type of sugar, so we should swear it off. No. Think big picture. But also
the poison is in the dose too. You know what I mean? And we tend to go hog wild on this or hog wild on that, and where some of this and some of that and something else. And that's the beauty of a spirit-led life, Aurora?
Totally, 100%. And so the last thing that I'll add to the agriculture piece is, especially in the world of grains, grains were introduced to humans, maybe I would say, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 20,000 years ago. We don't know for sure, right? But what we do know is that humans were thriving on a completely different diet before then. And based on ancient civilizations and everything we know about ancient architecture and things like that, we know that humanity goes back at least 250,000 years on this planet, right? At least.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And, even biblically and other spiritual texts, like, humans were living longer. So why was this? And when modern agriculture was brought, I think, to the planet, it changed a lot, because these were genetically altered. These were things that they were easy to grow, they were low maintenance, and they were easy filler foods. Yes, they'll sustain you, but they'll also rip you up and inflame the crap out of you.
It's interesting. If you go back to even the Dark Ages, which is like not that long ago, like 500 years ago? Not that long, right? You look at the royalty and what they ate, and you look at the peasants. The peasants ate grains. And they had so many health problems and bubonic plague and everything else. Now, the royals, they're the ones that ate the meat. And of course, the commoners couldn't hardly ever eat meat, because they'd be poaching, because all the best lands with all the deer and all the, edible animals were on the king's land. So you were not allowed to poach. You were not allowed to go. So if you look at the royals, they even to this day, they live to be basically 100 years old. Why? And you look at what they eat. They eat all things in moderation, but they have no chemicals in their diet. They do eat meat. I'm wondering if now I should get a little bit into what I was going to add to the hemp seed thing, Aurora, or do you have more to say? Because I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, you can go ahead. I'll swing back around. It's fine.
Okay, so we're quickly running out of time. There's a few points I really want to cover. So I'll just quickly say the hemp seeds, and we should do a show on this because hemp seeds have absolutely everything you need in them. Now, they don't use pesticides because they're from the hemp plant, one of the hardiest. It's the male of the two. The female is the one that produces the cannabis, but the male does not produce any THC. It produces the seeds, and it produces the fertilizer, and it's funny, it's got cute little balls on it. But anyway, besides that, it produces these seeds. Now, you can't really digest them unless they're hulled, but the internal hemp hearts is what it's called, and they're not that expensive to buy, but they have also all the oils that we need, not just to function properly, but to support us spiritually. So you may have heard about the holy oil that's in the cerebral spinal fluid that we need to release within our bodies, that has to flow within our bodies so that we can be healing ourselves and changing the planet and doing all these having all these amazing spiritual activities. Well, the best oil in the world to support that is actually hemp seed oil. But I recommend you get it from the hemp seeds because that's a perfect prepackaged delivery system. And you don't really want to remove from that. So that's what I wanted to say. And I've got all the scientific evidence. And Aurora, if you want, I can give you the links. You can read for yourself the research that's been done and how important those hemp seeds are. So you know what, guys, you can buy them at any supermarket, health food store, Costco sells them, and if you start incorporate some of that into your diet, then you really don't eat a whole lot of meat. So I believe, again, the poison is in the dose. We need moderation in all things. We don't need near the food we think we need. Problem is, people are addicted to food-like substances. And again, quantum health transformation, step 6 and step 5 gets into all of that. Now, there is something quick I want to add here, and that is I want to tell you the top 10 GMO foods. So if you go to the supermarket and you see any of these and they're not organic, they are absolutely now GMO. And that includes corn, golden rice, soy, cottonseed, which includes cottonseed oil that they use a lot in vegetable oils, canola, tomatoes, potatoes, sugar beets, squash, and papaya. Almost impossible to get them without being GMO. And so those are foods that I completely stay away from. I'm not going to take the chance. So now we're running out of time. We already talked about chewing food. There are basically just a couple things I really want to quickly run up. Whoops, I keep banging. I'm not used to having my microphone out here, so I'm banging into it till I get used to it. I want to talk a little bit about FODMAPs, lectins, and SIBO, and I do have a screen share, and I'll just read the screen share. So FODMAP, oh, I should wait. Is it up, Aurora? Is it showing up?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So FODMAP stands for fermented oleosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. I wonder if that's supposed to be polyphenols. Anyway, which are short chain carbohydrates, which are sugars, that the small intestine absorbs poorly. Some people experience digestive distress after eating them, and the symptoms can include cramping and diarrhea. Many people with digestive symptoms find that certain foods seem to trigger those symptoms. It's sometimes a long process of trial and error to pinpoint precisely which foods are the triggers. Researchers discovered that our digestive enzymes can break down certain types of carbohydrates known as FODMAPs, which include starches, sugars, and fibers in food. Instead, the good bacteria in our gut ferment them. Avoiding foods that contain these carbohydrates and only eating low FODMAP foods may be the key to relieving uncomfortable symptoms triggered by certain foods. And for people with gastrointestinal problems like bloating, gas, and irritable bowel syndrome, a low FODMAP diet may help. Some studies have shown that 3 out of 4 people with IBS saw fewer symptoms right away, with the most relief after a week of eating low FODMAP diet. And a low FODMAP diet may also help those suffering from food intolerance, which is a common cause of digestive symptoms such as bloating, gas, and abdominal pain. High FODMAP foods that you should avoid include fructose, which is fruits including apples, mangoes, pears, watermelon, honey, high fructose. Okay, I'm not going to read all these because we're running out of time, but basically fructose, lactose, fructans, and galactans. And do some research on your FODMAP if you're having digestive issues. And this is why people shouldn't just get on a vegan diet, and they may be suffering terribly. Now, they may do well on a vegan diet, but first they need to weed out these things that they're not able to digest, and then very slowly start adding them once they've done a bit of an elimination diet, so you can slowly build up to them. But some people never can eat these things, and it's just the way things are right now. So so fruit, a lot of fruits, a lot of dairy, of course, rye and wheat, and some vegetables and legumes such as beans, and then sugar alcohols that are in the pits of some things. Then I want to talk just a little bit about lectins, because this is another problem. I've had terrible problems with SIBO, FODMAP, and lectins. I have a very sensitive system. And so I have quite a bit of experience dealing with this, but I just want to give you just a cursory glance at it today, so that if you're having problems with your digestion, one of these may be your solution. So, and what SIBO is an acronym, SIBO, and it basically is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So what happens is, for some of us, I've had a lot of surgery, so I have an abnormal digestive system, and some of the fermentation and the gut bacteria that you need to break down your food gets into the upper digestive area and can cause huge problems. So I have to be very careful of fermented foods for that reason. And anyway, lectins are a family of proteins found in almost all foods, especially legumes and grains. Some people claim that lectins cause increased gut permeability and drive autoimmune diseases. And while it's true that certain lectins are toxic and cause harm when consumed in excess, they're easy to get rid of through cooking. Actually, you have to use a pressure cooker, but we'll get a little bit more into that. So they are found in all plants, but raw legumes, beans, lentils, peas, soybeans, and peanuts, and whole grains like wheat contain the highest amount of lectins. And the symptoms can be bloating, gas, and abdominal cramps, painful and swollen joints, fatigue and tiredness, skin rashes, hormonal fluctuations, nausea, allergy-like symptoms, and even neurological symptoms. And the 6 foods that are the worst source of lectins in the American diet is raw kidney beans, peanuts, whole grains, soybeans, potatoes. And then here's just a little chart that says high lectin food sources. Lectins are carb-binding proteins, mostly found in plants, and they're also known as anti-nutrients and compounds that may reduce the body's ability to absorb essential nutrients from foods. Lectins are speculated to cause a number of health problems, including weight gain, digestive issues, arthritis, headaches, and brain fog. Lectins are mostly found in nutritious foods like, and here it says wheat germ, barley, rice, eggplants, potatoes, tomatoes, garden peas, jack beans, navy beans, lima beans, raw kidney beans, soybeans, peanuts, and nutmeg. And of course, like we said before, you can sprout these things, you can soak them, you can cook them in a pressure cooker. and you can ferment them, and that helps to break down those lectins. And then as Aurora and I like to do, we also soak our nuts. And when you soak your nuts, you throw them in a mason jar and you cover them with filtered water and you let them sit. Could be, 6 hours. I let mine sit overnight, so probably more like 12 hours.
Yeah,
and then I rinse them off. If it's almonds, I shuck the skins off because that's high lectin. And then I put them in a food dehydrator so they're nice and crunchy again. Oh, and the water I soak them in has got a lot of salt in it. So that makes my nuts salty. I like salty nuts. And then I dehydrate them so they're nice and crunchy. And then I just throw them in a mason jar in the fridge and they keep almost forever. So I just wanted to say something about all of that. The other thing I wanted to tell you is I put on quite a lot of weight in December. And I decided that I was going to, and I was having all kinds of digestive problems. So I actually put myself on a lectin-free diet in January, and I've lost almost 22 pounds just from getting the lectins out of my system. And it's also warming up and I'm able to go for little walks. So I wanted to mention that. And I'm wondering if we have time. I would like to speak a little bit to pH and then about mushrooms and vitamin D, and then we're done. But before I do that, I thought I should stop and let my guest have a few words in case there's anything you want to add to what I just said, Aurora.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, goodness. Okay, so I was taking notes as we went along. Some of the things that I wanted to touch on before, I'll try to wrap that up really quickly in here as well. So one of the things that you were talking about was chewing and the enzymes. And I think part of that you see still in some cultures, but it's becoming rarer and rarer to see people handling their food. And honestly, like digestion and the process of having that synergistic relationship with consuming foods starts with our hands. It starts with our hands. It starts with transdermal nutrition. So also, that's a huge thing that I just want to mention really quickly is to think of the fact that whatever you are putting on your body should be edible. And I know for some people that's going to be a shocker, but this has everything to do with nutrition.
Yes. And 20% of your blood is constantly flowing through your skin and absorbing everything we put on our skin. That's why things like nicotine patches work. There's all kinds of drugs they now give you in a patch. And so, even like cosmetic things, not really cosmetic, but I like to put oil on my skin. Yeah. So I'll use just ordinary coconut oil, or I'll use some kind of oil that's actually good for me on my skin. And sorry, I to take this way. Please continue. It's all good stuff.
No, I think everything that you're talking about is really important. And I know even like the topic of deodorants, I've been making my own essential oil blends for 15 years now, because I will not touch even the nicest looking store-bought deodorant. I just won't put it on myself.
No, me neither. And besides, we can wash our stinky bits, guys.
Yeah, there's that.
And wash.
And, and I remember hearing you say this, it may have been the episode with Kathy or someone else, but you were talking about that what you eat also can determine. And that's so true. Like the more acidic we are, if we eat a lot of things like chocolate or coffee or things like that are high, super high acid, then it's going to come out our pores. Your body odor is going to be highly impacted by that. Now, if
sour. It's a sour smell, and you don't have that when you're on a spirit-led eating program.
No,
I don't know if you do. I don't wear anything. I just shower when I wash when I need. I don't need it. Just
exactly
not even part of my life. Don't even think about it.
Exactly. And there's things like you're talking about the blood of the plants. Chlorophyll itself. If you take chlorophyll, or if you're eating enough in the way of plants, chlorophyll is a blood purifier and it's a natural deodorant. So, I mean, there is something to be said about alkalinity, but there has to be balance as well. And I know you're going to get into pH in a little bit, so I won't take that from you. I'll let you handle that.
Sorry.
No, not at all. And I'll comment on it later. But But the other thing that I wanted to say, yes, so chewing and touching the food, that when you have that interaction with the food first with your hands, I mean, you see these beautiful tribes in Ethiopia, and not even tribes, even just going to like an Ethiopian restaurant and you're just eating the food with your hands. Like it's something that is in us that we know. And I'm not telling everybody to go out and eat with your hands all the time, but just don't give that up as like part of your interaction with food on some level at some time, even if it's just going and picking berries outside and just popping them in your mouth.
Yes.
And then the other thing that I think, and also there's something to be said, like you were talking about the tomato, some of those little fibers that are on certain foods when they're naturally growing outside, that's part of what our body really appreciates. And that's part of like, that interaction that actually creates more harmony and synergy. And the moment that we start sterilizing everything, then it's actually taking away from that efficiency of digestion and the efficiency of our body producing the proper enzymes to, break it down and absorb it properly. But the other thing in terms of having that relationship with our food, you mentioned like enjoy like that meditative process of chopping our vegetables. One of my personal ideologies in food that I've adopted and kind of like just created in my own world is beauty when it comes to food. Yes. I love making something super high vibe, nutritious, and making it beautiful. I'll take like edible flowers and I'll add edible flowers, or I'll add my hemp seeds on top, or even bee pollen once in a while, or whatever it is. And then, or I'll make like a little mandala with the different foods that I'm using. There's something to be said about when we honor our food and really see it as sacred, we're putting not only our joy into it, but then we're giving our own blessing, right? And like
absolutely.
The Essene Gospel of Peace, when they talk about the angel of earth, there's this beautiful scripture of communing with the angel of the earth when you're eating your food. And so I encourage people to check that out. It is so beautiful, and it just makes you rethink how you can sit down and eat your food. And with every bite, every time that you chew, there's just deep gratitude that's going through your body. You're creating different neurochemistry. Your hormonal system is completely turned around. Your digestive system is working way more efficiently because your body isn't in fight or flight when you're eating. You're in rest and digest. You're feeling peaceful. And not only that, but if we know, about Dr. Emoto's work and about infusing our intentions into things like water is life, right? It is the substrate of life, and all of life contains water. And this is the reason why seeds and little chunks of ginger, potato, or celery can be taken and replanted, because it has living, structured water in it and life force. It has sentience and intelligence. And so there is real mastery and real magic in blessing your food, but not like, oh, please bless this food. It's like, thank you. Thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you, Divine Creator, however you identify with that. Thank you, food. Thank you, farmers. And just generating that gratitude, you are creating heart-brain coherence in that moment. And you are infusing your food, just like that, the third insight in the Celestine prophecy, where I was talking about them interacting with the garden. They're actually magnifying what the food can then give back to you. And it's just such a magical journey. The other thing that I would
I just want to add two quick things, Aurora, at that point. I actually will even talk to my food. I'll actually talk to it and engage in it, and I thank it itself, and I tell it what I want from it, and I'm just that crazy. But the other thing is, there's a saying for people to remember, and it's chew your juice and drink your food. So if you're drinking a smoothie or you're juicing, you want to chew it as though it were a solid food, so that you produce the enzymes that wash through it before it goes down. That's your first level of digestion. The second thing is your food. You want to keep it in your mouth and chew it till it's a liquid before you swallow it. So all those beautiful enzymes can come out and wash through and start breaking it all down and combining with it. So the food even knows, oh, it's a part of Karen now or a part of Aurora. Just wanted to add those two quick things. Please do go on.
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff there. And, one thing that you can do is if you need something to help encourage that, especially with juices and smoothies, hemp seeds, again, that's a big one in my house. I love putting hemp seeds on top of smoothies, and I don't put them on my juices as much, but definitely on top of a smoothie, I'll put my hemp seeds on, and it just helps me remember to chew as I'm drinking.
Good idea.
It's so nice. And some people, they may do cacao nibs and stuff like that. And there's definitely medicine in cacao, 100%. I'm not saying to swear off chocolate in general. It's just that a higher acidity diet can contribute to more,
There's also a really big difference between eating a Mars bar and doing a sacred cacao ceremony.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe with salt and cayenne pepper and no sugar at all.
Yes.
Big difference. We're talking about two huge, like it's almost like everything's been perverted, Aurora, and changed to harm us, the very things that are there to heal us. It seems
exactly. Well, that's a whole conversation in itself, 100%. I mean, even the world of tobacco, and it's so deep. But
yes, taking it away from the sacred, and yes, absolutely. Let's do a show on that though in the near future.
That would be fun. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to shut you up.
Oh, in terms of cacao, I think it is such a beautiful medicine. It has the ability through, the theobroma to open our hearts and to stimulate new conversations in our neural pathways that have been maybe shut down for years, or maybe we've never even opened before. So it is medicine. But the thing is that there's a difference, like you said, between ceremonial cacao and store-bought chocolate bars. That the thing is, once cacao has been processed, it goes through, a process of refining. So it's totally broken apart from the fat, and then the cacao part of it, the alkaloid, and then they're not even a unit anymore. And that's the first mistake. And then what happens is then the alkaloid gets used typically without the fat or without the whole fat, or they're using different fats, and then it becomes some kind of, like you said, perverted thing. And then they mix a bunch of sugar in it. And that's another huge problem with food, is that, I mean, sugars alone are very destructive in the body, especially refined sugar, I should say. But sugar and fat together is like a recipe for disease.
Dynamite. Especially seed oils and crappy oils, and sugar is a death on, may as well line up and take the pills. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but it's a fact. That's how it is. Yeah. And I agree. Plus chocolate doesn't have the life force. And refined cocoa doesn't have the life force, but the raw cacao is just ground up nibs, and the nibs are actually fermented, which is fabulous, right? And you eat them and they're so good. In Central and South America, cacao was considered a currency. The Spanish came and they wanted all the gold. Show us your treasure, show us your treasure. And they showed them the treasure, and their storehouses were full of cacao. And the Spanish didn't get that it was more valuable than gold. Aurora, we really need to say goodbye soon. So I just wondered, I want to tell people about the mushrooms and the vitamin D, and I want to tell them about the pH balancing, because those are two things that I think are really critical, but I don't want to cut you off if you weren't quite done.
Well, I just had a few points that I just want to plug really quick, and then I'll hand it over to you. So
Thanks.
Some foods that I would just like to highlight that are highly beneficial foods that you can think of as being medicinal. And really, when you wrap your head around food being medicine as a rule, then you start to realize this with everything that you're eating, that it all can have its benefit for you if you know how to listen to it. Okay. But some of these
Absolutely.
foods that can be taken on the daily, that can be very beneficial for you, are things like dulse, or different kinds of seaweed,
Sea vegetables.
super high in iodine. There's a reason why, in places like Japan, where in this culture they're eating so much more iodine rich foods, they're not getting the same kinds of cancers and the same huge epidemics of all the different types of cancers, because they're getting a ton of iodine in their diets. So
Yes.
having something like sea vegetables or dulse, I get dulse flakes and I eat it by the spoonful. Nutritional yeast, and I'm going to say unfortified.
Oh, yes.
Get the unfortified stuff. You do not want fortified, because that's essentially synthetic vitamins. But this is something that, it was found in different places in Egypt. Some of, many things that you find in Egypt that were preserved, that have lasted the test of time. It's not because they're artificial foods. It's because they're foods that were known to be medicine. Even black garlic is another one, like a fermented garlic. It's so highly beneficial, especially, again, if you are going through any kind of journey with cancer or anything like that. But olive oil is another super beautiful whole food. And you can literally take like 2 tablespoons of olive oil just a day, but you need to be mindful of the source, and to make sure that it's real olive oil, because that's a big problem. Extra virgin,
and you can
organic olive oil.
tell because it bites you in the back of the throat. If it
That's
does not
right.
bite you in the back of the throat, it's not real olive oil.
Yes.
Just gonna say it.
That's absolutely true. And what I've learned with that too is that if you want an olive oil that's really, really medicinal, to find something that's grown in a hotter climate. And there's something about that brings out the medicine, the polyphenols, the antioxidants in the olive oil, and your skin just comes alive. Your digestive system comes alive. It's just beautiful. The other 2 things are avocado or avocado oil.
Yes,
and
yes.
Those hemp seeds. We're going to keep drilling those hemp seeds, you guys.
You know what? I eat everything you just said on a daily. I don't do hemp seeds on a daily basis, but I do them, and everything else I do on a daily basis. And I actually have a big mason jar, with my sea vegetables. And then every night, if I'm cooking a soup or stew, I just take a little big pinch of that and drop it in every day. There's just so much. Everything you've said has been absolutely fantastic, Aurora. Really appreciate it. There's just two tips I want to give people before we close out. And one is about pH. Now, a lot of people are saying you want to take boron and you want to put boron powder in your water in the summertime, and you want to take a lot of boron every day because it alkalizes the body. People are also saying the same thing about baking soda. But what I want to tell you is, first of all, the baking soda you buy, like the Arm & Hammer brand, that's made in a factory. That's artificial chemicals that have been combined. That's not even real baking soda. But the big takeaway, guys, from this is you never want to ingest baking soda or boron to try to alkalize the body. And I'll tell you why. Because when you take it into the stomach, it neutralizes your stomach acid and you can't digest your food. You can't break down and get your nutrients from your food. You need a high acid pepsin content in your stomach, or you can't digest your food. So we've talked about the chewing and getting the digestion started. We swallow it, goes into the tummy. Then the acids break everything down. That goes back into the small intestine, and there it gets realkalized, and you get everything you need. So what you want to do is you do not want to take these things and neutralize your stomach acid. Everybody I know who takes baking soda and boron to alkalize their body is sick, weak, and can't function. So what you need to do is to eat fruits and vegetables that are alkalizing your system. So things like sprouts, so things like squeeze half a lemon into your water. If you can do oranges and grapefruits and things like that, do research. You only can alkalize the body by eating, believe it or not, acidic foods that pass through the gut, go into the small intestine, and then they create an alkaline environment. And you can also get test strips where you can test your pee or your saliva or even your foods to see what your pH is. So that's super important. And then I got one last little goodie. Oh my gosh, we're running over time. I hope I'll be able to get all this in. The other thing I just found out, this is really important. So people are very vitamin D deficient in the winter time, and they're taking, synthetic vitamin D pills. Well, I found out that if you go into the store and you buy those ordinary white mushrooms, little button mushrooms, they're super cheap. They're generally organic. I buy organic anyway, just in case. And you bring them home and you wash them and you slice them and you put them in the sun for an hour. And they will produce enough vitamin D for you for the whole day and possibly more. And so what happens is mushrooms, those white mushrooms, I don't know about other kinds, you could try it, but the white mushrooms, I know for sure, they process the sun energy into vitamin D2 the same exact way our skin does, exactly the same. And so then you eat the mushrooms, you'll lose a little bit if you're cooking them, but you could eat some raw, and you're going to get your vitamin D that way. And vitamin D2 gets easily converted by the liver into D3. So that's about it for today. We've gotten so much information. I think we should do another show, Aurora, if you can come back next month, and we should continue on because there's so many divergent paths from this topic and things we didn't even have time to cover today. And I want to thank you so much for coming. All the links will be below. Please check out Aurora on Facebook. You're going to see she posts these pictures of these amazing, beautiful meals that she was just talking about on Facebook. Get an idea of what she's doing around food. I want to thank you so much, Aurora, for being on the show today. I want to thank you, all our viewers and our listeners out there. Please like, please share. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channels. And again, the links will be below. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Bye-bye for now. And we'll see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show. Thank you for joining us on the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels. Like this video and share it with your friends. You can also find the Quantum Guide Show and my other podcast called Aliens and Astrology on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network. That's www.forbiddenknowledge.news. And while you're at it, check out my website, www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, where you will find some amazing products and services and an abundance of free resources to help you with your journey. All of the links are in the description below. And in the meantime, until we see you next week, keep up the good work.
Puts all my inner strife to rest, for time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less, and the sages put me to their test. With heart and soul I do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I must confess, I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all an illusion, then I'm willing to play. It's okay.